International Rehabilitation Council for Victims of Torture meeting. We're really happy to have you, as I say. And we are pleased to say that this is going to be our first webinar after the summer vacation. So summer for those of us living in Europe. As you know, we do these webinars and the purpose of them is to get this community together. There are a lot of us who are interested in mental health. We're interested in knowing how members work together. And of course, we're interested in meeting each other. And this is what we're doing exactly today. So I am here to say that we will be talking about the situation in Syria and the response that the organization Restart has been working on, humanitarian response, combined with the psychosocial care response after the bombings and in the aftermath, of course, of the massive influx of refugees to that country. We're also here to talk about the response of IRCT members to the situation in Ukraine and the exodus of Ukrainians to many of the neighboring countries. So we're going to be hearing from member centers in Cyprus, in Moldova, Romania, and Croatia. It's a really interesting time to look at exactly this intersection between mental health, humanitarian response, and development aid. How do these different services fit together? And I'm really happy to hear that we have Restart here today, having received funding from the Novo Nordisk Fund, and also many of the organizations who've received funding from Sigurd Rousing to actually debate this. So how does this actually work? And with that, I would like to hand over to Dalal, who is the project manager in Restart in Lebanon. She will be telling us about their experience there in this exact place where we work, which is mental health and the rehabilitation of people who've been affected by incredibly traumatic situations, some of it torture, but other ill treatment. At the same time, having incredible needs, basic needs. This can be their food needs, their shelter needs, their protection needs. And where is this intersection and in which space? So Dalal, welcome very much. And thank you all for joining us here today. You have quite a crowd from countries all around the world. So over to you, Dalal, and welcome everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dalal Khaweza from the Restart Center, Lebanon. Let me first share my screen in order to start the presentation that covers the program or the project that was funded by Novo Nordisk Foundation, and we have implemented this project from August 1st, 2021 till July 31st, 2022 in partnership with the IRCT. The project name was Specialized Mental Health Services and Supportive Direct Food Assistance to Vulnerable Syrian Refugees and Affected Host Country Nationals in Lebanon. During this presentation, I will show you, first, I will introduce the Restart Center, how this project was implemented according to what let's say, a criteria. First of all, Restart Center.
I don't know if you could set your screen full screen, the presentation full screen. It's down in the, yes, perfect now, perfect, sorry.
So Restart Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence and Torture is a local NGO established in 1996 and is active in the field of human rights, specifically the right to rehabilitation and prevention from torture and violence. Restart Center envisions a world free of torture, where the individual's dignity, self-respect, and self-worth are cherished, and his her physical and psychological integrity and empowerment are guaranteed. The center seeks to prevent torture practices nationally and regionally through awareness raising, advocacy, and capacity building, and to ensure that the victim of an act of torture is treatment and war trauma obtains redress, particularly through the provision of means for as full rehabilitation as possible. So, as you may all know, in October 2019, the economic and financial collapse started in Lebanon. The currency devaluated and the inflation increased. The situation worsened due to the dual economic impact of the COVID-19 outbreak and the associated lockdown, and the massive explosion in the port of Beirut in August 2020 that killed more than 200 people, wounded over 6,500, destroyed a large part of the capital, and left around 300,000 people homeless. With these extreme challenges, extraordinary vulnerabilities and extreme escalation of torture and ill treatment have appeared between both the refugee and host country communities. A recent study showed that 46% of Lebanese are food insecure. Food prices have risen by more than 1,200%, and more than 80% of the population has plunged into poverty. This has been caused by and translates at the same time into challenges in accessing proper employment and income, education, healthcare, and other basic needs, basic services. In this situation, the vulnerability of people living in poverty to torture and ill treatment, as shown in numerous studies and reports, has never been more critical. Due to the mentioned situation, and since Restart Center is an affiliated active IRCC member center since 2003, we have together successfully collaborated to provide torture survivors and their family members with critical and fundamental health-based rehabilitation services as one of the main pillars in fighting against torture and violence, with a central focus on prevention, accountability, and victim reparation. Within the context of the project entitled Specialized Mental Health Services and Supportive Direct Food Assistance to Vulnerable Syrian Refugees and Affected Host Country Nationals in Lebanon, Restart Center, in partnership with IRCC and Novo Nordisk Foundation, aims to improve the psychosocial well-being of 2,000 vulnerable refugees and host country nationals with moderate and severe mental disorders in North Lebanon and Beirut, Mount Lebanon, through the provision of specialized mental health services to 600 vulnerable people and 2,000 household food assistance. So within the project lifetime, Restart Center has distributed 2,012 food parcels, has provided 2,069 specialized mental health services, including psychological, neurological, and psychiatric sessions, to 1,023 beneficiaries. As well, we have provided for 54 epileptic children with their medication treatment, and we have distributed PPEs and sanitizers to frontline workers, local health practitioners, and service users in North Lebanon and Beirut clinics. So as you can see in the chart, in the comparative chart, the aim was to assist 600 beneficiaries. So we were able to assist 1,032 beneficiaries. During the planning phase, we aimed to serve 2,000 food parcels. So we were able to provide 2,012. And initially, 50 epileptic children were able to benefit from the epileptic medication. So we were able to serve 54 children. We were able to serve these people, and the number was bigger than it was initiated in the project planning, because during the currency devaluation and the currency changes, Restart Center has applied a new modality, and we have took into consideration the fluctuation from the dollars versus LBC, our Lebanese currency, and a new cutting cost strategy has been applied. So a 30% decrease on the fees were applied. Therefore, we were able to serve more beneficiaries due to this policy. The mental health services consisted of remote and face-to-face preliminary psychological assessment and screening, remote and face-to-face psychological psychotherapy, including individual, couple, and family therapy or psychological counseling, psychiatric consultation and follow-up services. They were also face-to-face or through teleconsultation, neurological consultations and follow-up services, dispensing epileptic medication through Restart Medical Center. We have reimbursed a part of the transportation fees to vulnerable beneficiaries for each visit to the Restart Center, and we have reimbursed the internet data for service users before or following each remote session. So 1,023 persons with moderate and severe mental disorders were supported through the Novo Nordisk Foundation fund. As you can see, around 83% of Syrian refugees benefited, and 15% of host community were served also within this project. As for the gender segregation, women and girls represented 54% of the target, while men and boys represented 46% of the target. The vulnerability segregation was done according to the following. 63% of persons with mental health problems benefited from this project, 37% from survivors of trauma, and 37% from persons suffering from epilepsy and other nervous system disease, 21% from persons with disabilities, 6% from survivors of torture, 5% survivors of violence, including GBV, 2% persons at risk of harm, and 1% persons who attempted suicide. So these are the vulnerability segregation that were applied during the implementation phase. The mental health services were segregated by psychological sessions, psychiatric consultations, and neurological consultations. As you can see, the psychological sessions took the large part of the project. So 72% of the beneficiaries benefited from psychological sessions, 19% from psychiatric consultation, and 9% from neurological consultation. The modalities that were applied, as I have previously said, we have applied two modalities, either remote sessions or face-to-face sessions. The psychiatric consultation, so 35% of the psychiatric consultations were done through face-to-face sessions, while 65% were done remotely. The psychological consultation, 86% were done remotely and 14% face-to-face. As for the neurological consultation, 58% were face-to-face and 42% were done through the remote session. The psychotropic and anti-epileptic medication, if you want to see the nationality segregation, 94% were Syrian and 6% were host country nationals. As for gender segregation, 69% were boys and 31% were girls. 2012 households were provided with food parcels through this fund. As for the nationality segregation, you can see that the Syrian population benefited, 67% of the Syrian population benefited from the food parcel, while 32% of the Lebanese benefited from the food parcel. In order to measure the improvement of the sessions and of the beneficiaries benefiting from the sessions, and during the project's lifetime, a resilience measuring tests were administered to 180 beneficiaries who received at least 5 sessions of their treatment at Restart Center. So after doing the resilience test, we have noticed that 85% of beneficiaries were shown to be resilient to mental health disorders while receiving treatment at Restart Center. The resilience is evaluated through several constructs, such as self-belief, esteem, optimism, future orientation, connectivity, adaptability, engagement in activities, ingenuity, trust, support seeking, and capacity. And now you're gonna see the percentage of resilience according to each construct. So 88% of adult beneficiaries have shown to be resilient on the ingenuity component, in that they express the capability of finding solutions to problems that they encounter and identifying their own mental health needs and have access to required services, as well as identifying the mental health needs of others and referring them to required services. 85% of adult beneficiaries have shown to be resilient on the capacity component, in that they express increased capacity in making realistic plans and taking steps in carrying them out, as well as the ability to plan their daily tasks in hopes of making best use of their most productive time of the day. 86% of targeted adults and children have shown to be resilient on the adaptability component, in that they express willingness to adapt their behaviors and approaches in response to changing circumstances, such as the ability to address conflict in a non-aggressive manner, to handle and manage flashbacks from previous traumas, and to cope with external stressors. 86% of targeted adults and children have shown to be resilient on the support seeking and trust component, in that they acknowledge increased willingness to trust or ask others for help and support when dealing with difficult situations, share their feelings, concerns, and fears with people whom they trust, and listen to people with views that are different than theirs and accept their differences. 85% of adults and children have shown to be resilient on the self-belief, self-esteem component, in that they have expressed increased confidence in themselves, their ability to address problems and obstacles that they encounter, and their belief that their lives are meaningful and worth living. 80% of adults and children's beneficiaries have shown to be resilient on the optimism, future orientation component, in that they started to believe that they will experience good outcomes in life, have a better hope for the future, and remain positive in the face of setbacks and failures. 78% of adults and children's beneficiaries have shown to be resilient on the connectivity engagement component, in that adult beneficiaries are more capable to form and maintain positive relationships with others and more engaged in activities to support their children's development. As for children, they express increased desire to play with others, the ability to form and maintain positive relationships with others, for example, becoming more cooperative and less violent in relation with parents, siblings, and others, as well as increased engagement in school and community activities. Finally, 70% of adult beneficiaries have shown to be resilient on the sense of safety, well-being components, in that they express increased adaptation to stressful conditions without posing a risk to themselves or others, improved capacity to let go of negative thoughts, and feeling safe in their daily life. During the implementation phase, we have faced some challenges at clinical level. So the impact of the socio-economic crisis on mental health has been shown. According to these statistics, more than 100% increase in demand was recorded in 2022 as compared to 2021 among both refugees and Lebanese communities. So 19% among the refugees and 57% increase among Lebanese communities. 117% increase in referrals to secondary and tertiary psychiatric health care. Access to mental health care was affected by the fuel crisis and power outages. That's why we have referred to the remote sessions often. More than 100% increase in demand for protection, child protection, health, basic needs, and shelter services were also shown. As for the lessons learned from this short lifetime project, so based on practices, beneficiaries are facing immense challenges in securing their basic needs, including food, safety, and shelter rent. They are reporting increased helplessness and depressed mood due to their inability to secure the basic needs for their families. With time, these matters are becoming more pronounced, thereby diverting beneficiaries' focus in session to their basic needs concerns. Therefore, their initial complaints, I mean by initial complaints, the reason why they sought treatment in the first place, has become secondary to these concerns. So, we have noticed that livelihood activities, notably the distribution of food parcels, are considered fundamental to complete the rehabilitation process because they affect positively on the healing process, and therefore beneficiaries feel less concerned regarding meal provision to their families and self-sufficiency once their basic needs are secured. And as you may know, we are dealing with people with extreme vulnerability, with extreme poverty. They have limited sources. Second, the adopted model during the COVID-19 has facilitated the treatment process. So beneficiaries were able to profit from the services, whether from home or from our clinics directly. This flexibility allowed service providers and beneficiaries to feel more comfortable and safer within the period of treatment. And this modality allowed them to continue their treatment. The psychological follow-up and counseling affects positively beneficiaries' self-esteem, their optimism and future orientation, their connectivity, their adaptability and engagement in activities, ingenuity, trust, support-seeking, and capacity. So the psychological follow-up and counseling is badly needed within these circumstances. And finally, the continuous discussions and engagement of the donor before, during, and after the implementation phase affect positively on the operational component of the project, especially within a period of a swift deterioration in the county. So this flexibility allowed us to do some changes, some amendments on the project activities, and therefore we were able to serve more beneficiaries in need. At the end of this presentation, I would like to share with you a short video summarizing what has been done all over the year.
And as we're waiting for the video to run, Dalla, I can just encourage colleagues to think about any questions you might want to pose, and we'll have a short question and answer session after Dalla shows us your video. You ready to go, Dalla?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Something went wrong. You're hearing the voice?
No, I think you should share your screen first, because now we're only seeing you. Otherwise, if you send me the link, I can also screen it.
Are you able to hear? No.
No sound. But
No.
when you share, there's an option to click that says share with sound. Otherwise, I have it here ready on my screen if you want me to share it.
Yes, please go ahead, because it is.
Don't worry, I can go ahead and share it. There you go. You can see it.
Restart Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence and Torture is a local NGO established in 1996 and active in the field of human rights, specifically the rights to rehabilitation and prevention from torture and violence. Restart Center envisions a...
We're not seeing the video, so I will try it again.
world free of torture, where the Restart Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence and Torture
Yeah, I'm ready to go. So I think, Dalal, I'll need you to start sharing. Now I'm doing it. I'm just going to stop. Dalal, I'm going to share it myself, so don't worry about it. Now.
Restart Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence and Torture is a local NGO established in 1996 and active in the field of human rights, specifically the rights to rehabilitation and prevention from torture and violence. Restart Center envisions a world free of torture, where the individual's dignity, self-respect, and self-worth are cherished, and his or her physical and psychological integrity and empowerment are guaranteed. The establishment of Restart Center emerged from the need to rebuild the lives of torture and war trauma survivors in Lebanon, and to restore the harm suffered by the victims whose dignity, health, and self-sufficiency may not be fully recovered without the adequate, effective, and comprehensive rehabilitation. The Center seeks to prevent torture practices nationally and regionally through awareness raising, advocacy, and capacity building, and to ensure that the victim of an act of torture, ill-treatment, and war trauma obtains redress, particularly through the provision of means for as full rehabilitation as possible. In Lebanon, the unfolding economic and financial collapse that started in October 2019 and included high inflation and currency devaluations is further worsened by the dual economic impact of the COVID-19 outbreak and the associated lockdowns and the massive explosion in the port of Beirut in August 2020 that killed more than 200 people, wounded over 6,500, and destroyed large parts of the city. With these extreme challenges, extraordinary vulnerabilities and extreme escalation of torture and ill-treatment have appeared among both the refugee and host country communities. A recent study showed that 46% of Lebanese are food insecure. Food prices have risen by more than 1,200%, and more than 80% of the population has plunged into poverty. This has been caused by and translates at the same time into challenges in accessing proper employment and income, education, healthcare, and other basic services. In this situation, the vulnerability of people living in poverty to torture and ill-treatment, as shown in numerous studies and reports, has never been more critical. Due to the mentioned situation, and since Restart Center is an affiliated active IRCT member center since 2003, we have together successfully collaborated to provide torture survivors and their family members with critical health-based rehabilitation services as one of the main pillars in fighting against torture and violence, with a central focus on prevention, accountability, and victim reparations. Within the context of the project entitled Specialized Mental Health Services and Supportive Direct Food Assistance to Vulnerable Syrian Refugees and Affected Host Country Nationals in Lebanon, Restart Center, in partnership with IRCT and Novo Nordisk, aimed to improve the psychosocial well-being of 2,000 vulnerable refugees and host country nationals with moderate and severe mental disorders in North Lebanon and Beirut, Mount Lebanon, through the provision of specialized mental health services to 600 vulnerable people and 2,000 household food assistance. In fact, starting August, Restart Center has distributed 2,012 food parcels to 2,012 distinct households in the designated regions in Lebanon, and 1,872 specialized mental health services, including psychological, neurological, and psychiatric sessions to 873 beneficiaries among refugees and the host community. Before starting the treatment at the center, I was suffering from fear, from horror, from insecurity. I was depressed, spending my time sleeping, hopeless, and I had no energy. I lived through these feelings for 2 years and a half until I reached Restart Center and started to benefit from the provided services. After 10 psychotherapy sessions and psychosocial support, a remarkable improvement has been shown. The fear lessened. I became hopeful, full of energy, seeking for a job, and taking care of my children. I tried to regain my life and ease the life of my family. Now I am working, taking care of my family, and very thankful to what I have become. In Lebanon, civil society organizations are advocating for the eradication of torture and ill-treatment by conducting comprehensive torture prevention efforts at all levels, especially through the following components. First, legal reform and implementation of the relevant laws and articles, including Law 65 that criminalizes torture in Lebanon, and Article 47 of the Lebanese Penal Code that provides newly arrested persons with their fundamental legal safeguards at the very early stage of arrest. Second, capacity building targeting relevant state agencies, notably national security forces. Third, push towards the establishment of an independent national preventive mechanism according to the OPCAT. And last but not least, media and awareness-raising campaigns to widespread knowledge among refugees and host community nationals about their rights. The healing journey of a torture survivor can be a long one, potentially a lifelong one. Restart Center strives to expedite the process of healing in order to help restore torture survivors' lives. With over 35,000 survivors being supported at Restart Center from 1996 till date, this number continues to increase. But what makes things worse is that we're not just referring to numbers here, we're talking about people. In Lebanon, torture survivors' path towards healing is even more challenging due to the economic and social situation. As a result, individuals have become more vulnerable. What's next for Lebanon? Are we doing enough? In fact, will there ever be enough when a person's dignity and self-respect are taken away? Probably not.
All right, I think we need to do a little round of applause to Restart and all the colleagues. Really amazing, Dalal, fantastic and quite concise presentation. I would like to invite, I don't know if it's just me celebrating here, but are there others that would like to ask questions of our colleagues in Lebanon who really delivered an outstanding presentation and also very concise lessons learned on the intersection between food and psychosocial care, basic needs and psychosocial care. Any questions out there? Please feel free to raise your hand. We'll try and bring you online if you have questions.
I think there's Lina.
Lina, please step up.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lina. Lina Safa is my name. I'm a case manager working with the survivor advocate, working with the program for torture victims in Los Angeles, California. And as a Lebanese, I'm so proud of what I just saw. Thank you so much, Ms. Dalal. Thank you so much for Restart Lebanon. That is highly impressive. So, and I do have a couple of questions, if you do allow me, ladies and gentlemen. So first, about the national needs in terms of the challenges. Of course, you did face many challenges implementing your amazing project. So on challenges on two levels, this is my question. The first level is, were you able to manage or to balance between the nationals' needs and the refugees, given the second level of challenges, given the Lebanese government's classification of refugees and displaced Syrians? And once you answer, if you would allow me, I have a second question that is supplemented to this one. Thank you so much.
I answer the first question, or do you want to ask both questions and I answer?
Whichever you would like, Ms. Dalal.
No
I don't want to
problem.
make it hard on you.
No problem. So regarding your questions on how to balance between the needs of nationals and refugees, Restart Center has several projects. So it implements several funded projects from international agencies, and according to the needs that we see, we dedicate each project with its target group, which means we serve the Lebanese and we serve the Syrians according to their needs and according to each project target group.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So for my second question, so we know that the Lebanese government had a certain plan called the the Lebanon Crisis Response Plan.
Yes.
Yes. So, and within this plan, they did classify they have a little bit of different classification in terms of the Syrian refugees. So from their end, from the government's end, they call it, they classify them as Syrian displaced, whereas according to United Nations classification, they are classified as refugees.
Mm-hmm.
So were there any response or any collaboration between the government and your role in this end, on this level?
Restart Center builds on the national discussions with authorities, and this is a powerful point for Restart Center, that it's always launched discussions in order to find out a common ground with them in order to be able to serve beneficiaries. So for us, we serve a human being, regardless if he is a refugee, displaced, national. Our aim is to serve a beneficiary, a person in need with his needs, and to be able to increase or to improve his mental health, well-being, and other related issues.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Please let us just exchange contact information for maybe future potential partnership or collaboration between your office and our office in Los Angeles. We would be happy to do that. Thank you.
Agree. And this is an opportunity. This is what these webinars are all about. Like, use the chat, please, folks. Exchange emails so you can connect that way, and talk to each other moving forward. We are now going to, after that excellent presentation that really puts us into the mindset of the intersection between psychosocial care and basic needs, addressing them. So this is a fantastic example, lots of lessons learned and challenges ahead. We have seen a lot of the similar problem showing up in the response into the Ukraine war, or the war that's going on in Ukraine. Now we're going to move, so we have to take ourselves and move ourselves geographically in our mind from Lebanon to Ukraine. But I think this, and the surrounding countries, right? There are some applications here. We're going to hear directly from Corina and Stavros. They are based out of the center in Cyprus, and they will be talking to us about the situation there, their response to refugees coming into their country, and also psychosocial care and rehabilitation together. So I thank you very much, Jalal, and I hand over 10 brief minutes from our colleagues from Cyprus.
Hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Can you hear me and see me? I think everything is fine.
Perfect.
Such a pleasure to, and congratulations to the colleagues in Lebanon doing excellent work under extremely difficult circumstances. I think it always helps for us to hear each other's work, and I think it helps us cope with our daily as well. So going straight into the work that we're doing here at the Cyprus Refugee Council. So very briefly, we provide, we follow a holistic approach, meaning that we provide legal services, integration services, social services, and we also have a specialized unit that deals with psychosocial support for victims of torture and other vulnerable groups. Our team has many years of experience in dealing with trauma, PTSD, and working generally with such from various countries. So this year we've now had to unfortunately also address persons from Ukraine. There was already an existing Ukrainian population in Cyprus, as there's many Russian and Ukrainian companies based in Cyprus. So there was already a population established here, which has been positive in the sense that they've been able to provide support, and they've gotten organized for the persons coming in. Now, what we've seen in this first period is a lot of movement. So the entries into Cyprus from February onwards have been just over 40,000. which, for reminding you, Cyprus is a country of a population just under 1 million, so quite a high number. But there's also been exits of, according to the data provided, about 28,000. So remaining in the country is a population of 13,000, out of which about 10,000, close to 11,000 have temporary protection. So being an EU member state, in Cyprus, the temporary protection status is being provided, which is a very positive thing. However, Cyprus has selected the more conservative implementation, which means that temporary protection is only provided to Ukrainian nationals who left Ukraine after the 1st of February. And this has actually been one of the reasons that many people have come and then realized that they weren't eligible and have left. But it has also left persons in the country undocumented, and it's also interesting to see that not many, a very small number, has actually accessed the asylum procedures. So under the IRCT project, we've been focusing on psychosocial support. And it's interesting for us to see the differences with the other populations that we are assisting, in the sense that the people reaching are fresh from these really bad events happening, and that their needs differ. So for the social aspect of the support provided, basically what we do is we provide information on the procedures, how to access both the legal status, how to access the rights provided under the status, and then for persons who are not eligible, also provide alternative options and solutions. Again, interesting observation is that under the temporary protection status, which is not the same situation for asylum seekers, the persons have a full access to the labor market, the same as nationals. And it's been very interesting to see how this support from day one, or this access to a better package of rights, has actually allowed people to navigate and find ways to support themselves. And we're seeing that they're actually less dependent on our assistance in comparison to other populations who have these very restricted rights while they're asylum seekers. So I think this is also a very good lesson for which I think all of us in the field knew this, but in our advocacy efforts towards the states and the and for us for the EU. So the main request that we have been receiving in relation to the social assistance has been, as I said, access to the status, access to social rights, access to healthcare. So this is one area where the service, the level offered is lower than what is offered for nationals, and this has created a need for more support from us. Many people coming into the country are elderly, so it's grandparents of persons who are already residing here, or parents of persons already residing here. So quite a high demand for assistance to navigate in for medical issues. And then another interesting point is a lot of requests for information on the right to exit and come back, or including even to go to Ukraine. And whether they would be able to return to Cyprus if they then see that the situation is still not safe to remain. Specifically, the psychological support, what we are observing is that the majority of persons will contact us on a more ad hoc basis and will require a single intervention. Even if our psychologists observe the need for a more systematic support, the willingness to go into that is very, very low. And what the psychologists are reporting is that they're seeing persons in a situation where they consider it to be still temporary. There's still the hope that very soon they will be able to return. They're in a survival mode, so they're dealing with the day-to-day challenges to secure the basic needs, but they don't have the capacity to get into to deal with their psychosocial well-being. And we actually see this period as a preparation for what we foresee will be the next phase. And we expect that there will be a rise in the request for psychological support, whether the war continues and there's a realization that this is not a temporary situation and this is going to be continuing, or even if the war, hopefully there is an end to it and the aftermath, and then dealing with what has happened and all the consequences of the situation. So this in brief is what we've been doing here with the wonderful support of IRCT. And just very, very briefly to mention another initiative related to psychological support for Ukrainians, not under the IRCT fund, but a project organized and funded by War Foundation and the Laguna Collective, which is based in the Netherlands. This is a training series that targets Ukrainian and international mental health professionals who are working in Ukraine and neighboring countries in order to support these professionals in this really difficult times, and to enable them to diagnose and identify treatment protocols for extreme cases related to psychotrauma. The part that we've taken on, our senior clinical psychologist, Tonia Loizil, has been providing online case consultation to mental health professionals who are responding to conflict-affected communities in Ukraine. And it was a very, very well-received initiative. And although everybody was very, very experienced, we see that even ourselves, when put into extreme situations, how helpful it is to have the assistance of colleagues. Unfortunately, that's finished now. Although the funding has finished for that. Although there were requests by the Ukrainian professionals to continue it, and we hope we're able to find funding in the future to continue to support them. And they also, the feedback from them was also that persons right now are mostly in the survival mode, and they expect a lot of the trauma to be coming up in the near future. So
excellent.
That's from us.
Corina, thank you very much. Super interesting observations. And I think maybe your other colleagues coming online here will be reporting the same. But this idea that this is, that clients coming in are expecting just a single service, that they're in this temporary mode, thinking this is like an emergency situation, but that, and you're addressing that, but at the same time thinking that this could be a long-term and they will be could be potentially staying or coming back for more services. And number two, I think interesting that you talk about this other project of supporting, local capacities. There is a professional network for sure. And we've been talking about that for a while, and supporting the Ukrainian professional network there, colleagues who know health professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, right, to connect with them. It's really an excellent initiative. So thanks. I'm asking participants, save your questions. At the end, we'll try and, if the speakers allow, we'll have some questions. But thank you very much. I'm going to go on to Camilla. She is going to give a perspective from the response going on in Romania. So again, we're traveling around the globe here. We know that there's a world global response going on, but we're just doing a deep dive into a few countries. Camilla, and thank you very much, Corina. Excellent.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you. I don't know if I have to put my presentation myself on the screen, or it's Berta who's doing that.
However you prefer, Camilla.
You can do it because
then
it's easier.
Yeah, perfect. I can do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I decided to give you an update of the last 3 months, what happened in Romania, because I had previous intervention, and I will not insist about the work of our organization the last 30 years. We are one of the oldest civil society organization in Romania, keeping the focus from the beginning to the end, except this year when we switched somehow from the rehabilitation of victims of human rights violations to humanitarian aid and combined the two when it was possible. First of all, we have staff in 6 points, in 6 locations in Romania, in Bucharest, in Iași, so that's on the border, Iași and Siret, Sighet, and Galați, Isaccea. This is on the north and northeastern part of our frontier with Ukraine. We have the longest frontier with them. And then also we have services for them in the other location in Romania, especially in the big city, Bucharest and Iași. Can you please go to the next data? And I was having an overview of these last 3 months when we had more organized activity, because at the beginning of the conflict, it was mainly based on volunteer work, and we were just tasting the water to know where and how to interfere. And then, of course, at the beginning, we did whatever it was necessary. We helped the local authorities with papers, translations, and so on. That was one of our problems. We don't speak Russian, and at the beginning, that was quite difficult to communicate with the Ukrainians. But in the process, we solved also this problem. So we had mainly this activity, 4 activities during this period, offering social, psychosocial support, offering medical services, offering psychosocial services to refugees. I think this is a repetition. And of course, our collaboration with the state institution, which was extremely important. The Romanian state tried to respond to this crisis and organized assistance for Ukrainian refugees. And as Corina mentioned, probably it was all over European Union, the decision to offer them directly the status of international protection. So they didn't go through the whole journey of an asylum seekers and so on. So they had the right also in Romania to work immediately, to get the social benefits, to access the health system, and so on. Well, theoretically it was very nice, but as always, in practice, you find a lot of challenges. And our problem was the demand, the big demand of medical services, which were not in reality covered by the health insurance in Romania, except if the Ukrainians were working and they were paying the contribution, or the employer, or somehow they were paying by themselves this contribution in order to access the system. It was promised that the family doctors, if they will enroll on their list the Ukrainian patients, they will be refunded by the health insurance from the state, which was almost impossible. We tried the system, it didn't work. And very soon the general practitioner refused to offer assistance. It was too complicated and they didn't have time. It was also the problem of language. Could we go, please, Berta? So in these 3 months, we managed to see 4,256 refugees coming from Ukraine to Romania. And we offered various type of services, as I mentioned. Especially they were in need of information about their rights in Romania, what are the different system, education, employment, and so on in Romania. And also we were asked about other conditions in other European countries. And we were also distributing different hygiene kits, which I never think we would do it. But it was a need, so we had to do it, and it was very useful. We went with them whenever they needed to go to the doctor, to the laboratory, to the hospitals, and so on. And of course, we were, our staff being at the borders, they were the first one to welcome them and actually to offer this emotional support at their arrival, which was extremely important. And they told us in time that was really surprising, the warm welcoming and the solidarity they saw in Romania, they didn't really expect. Next, please. So here it's a kind of inventory, a numeric picture of the services. Is what we managed to put together from our colleagues in the other location. It was quite a challenge because they had, in most of the places, they had to pay the services, to pay for the medical investigations, for hospitalization and things like that. And as Corina said, a lot of chronic diseases because elderly people came and they were having ongoing treatments, and they were needing hospitalization for different other medical procedures, and we had to do that. Of course, we had to collect funds from different donors because, as everybody knows, the medical activity, it's expensive, and obviously we couldn't cover all the needs at the country level. We try to do our best with the funds we have. Yes, can we go next? And here I also have to say that the psychological interventions were not in a big demand. And maybe also because women, which were mainly coming with children, were focusing on their children, and they had to cope with this situation, to take care of the children, to explain why they suddenly had to change the location, why they had to be separated from their families and especially from their fathers, which was a big problem, difficult to explain, and is the reason why many of them went back and forth and are still doing that. Fortunately, Romania has this long frontier, and they can freely move up and down. So, okay, next, please. As you can see from this slide, the size of the psychological activity is not extraordinary. However, in order to do that, for mothers with children, we had to have the approval of the places where they were hosted, and these were mainly the directorates for children protection. And the protocols we had to sign with them took a lot of time and so on. So it's still a lot of bureaucracy around the assistance. We don't have the freedom we would need, but on the other hand, there is also a problem of safety. of who is accessing their places and what they are doing. So I also understand these safety concerns. And after this, okay, can we go to the next, please? Yeah, it's just what I said, and that was the most difficult part was in Bucharest, where for each protocol we had to have at least 5 directors, different departments to sign our protocols. Okay, next, please. And here are the different locations where we went to offer our services. The need assessment was made on the spot on this location, and our staff was sending to Bucharest the list where from we were controlling the whole activity and paying for all expenditure. And that meant hundreds of visits to these places. And of course, we couldn't cover the needs of the people which were living in private accommodation in the villages, isolated somewhere. That was difficult, and we couldn't reach these persons. Okay, and we were talking about their rights to work. Yes, this is true, except the health professionals. The medical doctors are not allowed to work as a medical doctors unless they are going through the whole diploma, you know, equivalation and things like that, examination, and receiving the approval of the membership of the medical college and so on. It's the same for psychologists. So what we did, we hired them as interpreters, because anyway, we needed interpreters badly everywhere. And that somehow solved for a short period of time the situation. And this is also one of the characteristics of our assistance. We cannot follow up on our intervention as we would do in normal circumstances, because it's a very fluid population. They are coming and they are leaving, they are staying, they are changing the location even within Romania. And there is no way for following up on their situation unless they are calling us saying, thank you, we are okay. Clearly, the need for medical services, it's in the present time the most acute need. And clearly, the Romanian state is not able to properly cover this need. So we did what we could do. We are fundraising to continue this activity and to help as many people as we can. So I'm not going into more details because maybe they are not relevant, but we have to deal with that. There are people coming from, especially from the southern part of Ukraine, with full, complete files ready to take the social benefits, even the material assistance and so on, and they are going back. And because that's based on monthly, so they are coming back and forth monthly. So we have to really be careful, because there are people who are, of course, taking profit of this situation. So there is something else we have to take into consideration and to be careful, because the funds are really very limited compared with the needs. So this is more or less what we are doing and where we are today. And thank you, Lisa. I want to say that we are very grateful for your assistance, for your financial assistance, and the fact that with the grant we got from you, we will secure the premises where we will have the activity in the winter with the refugees. And that will be a challenge for everybody, and especially here when the prices for utilities are rocketing and we have to to deal with this situation too. So thank you very much for that. It was very, very welcome and appreciated. Thank you.
You are so welcome. And I'm hearing, this is what we hear through member centers around the world, but especially in the spot, I hear centers, this rehabilitation centers, yours, Camelia, being resilient, adaptive, meeting people with integrity on the border, responding to their, immediate also psychological needs, but at the same time, your basic needs, adapting and finding creative ways to hire the capacity of great psychologists or psychiatrists coming from Ukraine as translators. I think there's some really interesting lessons learned here. I hear you also planning a bit for the future, knowing this will be a long haul. Also, I think a wise move. So thank you very much, Camelia, for this input. There's a lot more to be learned. I'm going to give the floor now. We're moving in our travels to Moldova, also subjected to a lot of refugees influx there. So at this point, Ludmila, you have 10 minutes. We have to be respectful. The webinar goes only until the half-hour marker here. So 10 brief minutes, and then our colleagues from Croatia would like to speak also. Thank you, Camelia.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Adriana. Adriana will support me with our presentation. I'm really impressed by experience of our colleagues from Cyprus and from Romania. Indeed, I will try to be short. For us, for Memoria Center, this crisis was, how to say, the first experience, the first time when we are actually flooded by refugees from neighbor country. So far, we assisted more than 2,500 refugees from Ukraine. When I'm speaking, we assisted, that means people who addressed to Memoria, people who came to our center for to receive support, to receive basic assistance, because we focused more on refugees who are living in the rented spaces or are hosted somewhere in villages, people who decided to stay in Moldova, but people who are not very well informed, because they are living apart without access to internet, and they needed more information and more support than refugees who are living in the organized centers for refugees. So in our working list, we have about 2,000 long-term assisted people and about 500 of short-term people who transited Moldova and have been assisted at Memoria for 1 month or maximum 2 months. So you have here on the screen information about how many women we assisted, and girls, men, boys. Services we provided so far, we focus on medical services. As Camelia said, many of them need medical assistance. Many of them came to Moldova with chronic problems, with severe illness, so they needed medical consultations, they needed medicines, they needed diagnostic investigations, including very expensive as computer tomography and others. The second service, psychological, was very important so far, because many of them are suffering very much because of war trauma, separation, etc. Psychosocial programs, we tried to help them to adapt to this new context, a new situation, and to increase their resilience and to try to continue their life in spite of all the difficulties and problems faced in Moldova by them and faced in Ukraine by their relatives and husbands who remained, who are now in Ukraine to fight with Russian army. So among psychosocial programs, we decided to organize for them some excursions. We identified people who wanted to develop some activities or some hobbies, etc. Including food, sanitary, hygienic products, etc. We did a lot. We managed to provide a lot of packages, support, especially in the first months when they arrived without absolutely nothing. And cash assistance. Memoria was the first organization in Moldova who decided to provide such support, and thank you very much to RCT. You accepted this kind of support because they needed essential food like milk, meat, dietary products, etc. for children and for people with diabetes and very difficult chronic disease. Next one, please, Adriana. So you can see here excursions for families, mothers and kids. Mothers are suffering a lot from depression, from anxiety, and of course their children are affected by the situation and by the status of their mothers. So that's why we decided to organize different activities like excursions in order to put them together in another environment, not only in their small places where they are living. We developed some activities for children involving volunteers. It was very interesting for them, and such activities are useful when their mothers are in our center for psychological assistance, for example, or for medical consultations. We invited also volunteers to help and to develop some activities in our center, outside our center. Next one. So we cooperate a lot because our center is very small, our staff is very small. In this critical period, we are only 7-8 persons who are working now with refugees from Ukraine. For this reason, we developed a very good cooperation at local level, trying to cover the needs of refugees and internationally also. In this way, we managed to provide a lot of services to our beneficiaries and a lot of very needed basic items like food, sanitary or dignity packages, or you can see here, we assisted so far about 15 pregnant women, and after that they gave birth, and we assisted them also with all they needed the postpartum services. Next one, Adriana. So we will continue to help in spite of difficulties and challenges faced by a small team. You can see here my colleagues and me, we are a very small team, but we are trying to do our best in order to help as much as possible refugees from Ukraine. Now we invited in our center refugees, volunteers to help us to work with refugees. We have 2 volunteers from United States and 1 from Australia in order to help us to help refugees and to document their stories. We are trying to work with testimony therapy. So sometimes it's very important to be there when refugees are ready to speak and are ready to speak and are interested to write their stories and to make their stories public.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Again, Ludmila, fantastic snapshots. And here we're seeing again an organization, though not many staff, being incredibly proactive, coordinating across sectors. You know, there was a Nordic mental health seminar, the last 2 days conference here in Copenhagen, all the Nordics getting together and all their members around the world, UNICEF, World Health Organization, etc., trying to talk about how can we be better at addressing mental health needs also in humanitarian situations. I think the 3 presentations, 4 we've just heard today, are exactly the kind of evidence that needs to be given back to policymakers. It is possible. You're showing, Ludmila, your possibility to change gears and to work with the knowledge and the professional work that you do, treating severely traumatized people, to also go into the emergency gear and then shift back. Of course, we need funding to do it, but I think these are excellent examples. I'm going to then thank you very much, Ludmila. We're going to go now to Dragana from Croatia. So we're traveling onward as refugees do. They move from country to country. Things move, as do we. Over to you, Dragana. You have the last 10 minutes. And then if people would like to stay online with us an extra 10 minutes, we can have your questions. Go ahead, please, Dragana.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lisa and Berta, for inviting me. I will share my short presentation and our experience. We are facing in Croatia same or similar challenges as our other colleagues in providing mental health and psychosocial support to Ukrainian refugees. But what I would like to share with you today is how we've adapted to many challenges that we are working with, and that helped us previously and helps us now. And this changed approach, changed method or paradigm that we work with connects our work from 5 or 6 years ago and today, and also connects the experiences from different so-called refugee crises. So what our colleagues in Lebanon are facing still today, we also had faced and had misfortune to experience in 2015 and 2016, when influx of Syrian refugees came even to Croatia as a small country, into our small team. And we had the need to do something differently to be able to address increased needs that we were facing. And since 2016, a very small, tiny, I would say, RCT team adopted solution-focused brief therapy and solution-focused approach to trauma treatment, and it helps us today. And we are seeing how adaptation of this approach increases our capacities, increases our excitement, our curiosity, and our motivation and engagement with to work with every client, and to what is also very important, how it increases our own resilience as helpers and of course as a team. So I'm not going to talk about what currently we are working with Ukrainian refugees and other refugees who are still in Croatia, but how do we apply solution-focused approach to trauma recovery? And perhaps some of you colleagues from the community are already acquainted with the approach, and for you who are not, maybe you will be instigated to find out more and to learn about more, and be as excited as we are in applying this way of thinking about how people are changing and how people do overcome even the most difficult situations, difficult feelings that they are experiencing. So solution-focused approach is about what our clients want from working with us, about their desired outcomes, not our own outcomes for the clients. And this means that the client is an expert for his own life and for his own desired outcomes, and we as professionals, as helpers, are only experts to ask questions to find out, for the client to find out, to define their own desired outcomes, and how this fulfillment of the desired outcomes will make a difference in their own in their life, their own preferred future. So when the desired outcome is present, what will be different in one's everyday life, in very mundane everyday details. So when we ask with clients in this way, we are moving, not only moving away from the problem, but we are going towards something that is different. And that sets a completely different conversation with our client. When working with clients, with persons who have experienced trauma or torture as the most extreme form of human rights violation and most extreme traumatic experience, we are approaching from the standpoint that the client is influenced but not determined by his traumatic experience. And not only that, but we ask carefully, deliberately, and with a lot of self-discipline, use language and questions to also elicit this knowledge and standpoint with our clients, that they are influenced but not determined with the traumatic experiences, that they do have strengths and abilities. Not only they have it, but they are demonstrating it and using it all the time, even when things are the most horrific and difficult. They use their strengths and abilities to survive. So even if we are working with people who are still in surviving mode, that is actually a good news, because we can elicit the strengths and abilities and competencies that our clients do experience and do manifest in use all the time. And we broaden this perspective, and we help our clients to identify with their strengths, abilities, and competencies and resources that they are already using. We work with unique desired outcomes for each of our clients. And in this transforming conversation with trauma and torture survivors, it is not necessarily to prompt remembering or experiencing difficult feelings for our clients to be able to overcome them. It does not mean that we go away and do not talk about it, but we also acknowledge, validate the experiences, empathize. And what we are doing, we are carefully choosing what we are going to reflect on, and we are listening carefully and reflect on strengths, abilities, and skills that our clients used to use and still using to deal with and to go through and to survive and to manage their everyday life, even though they've survived horrific things, because they are doing that. If they are sitting across us and talking to us, that's the evidence that they are doing that. And we are very carefully using the language and using what to reflect on to help our clients tap into this part of their experiences. Because what we know, and with questions we help our clients to also know, is that exceptions are always present. However difficult the problem is, however overwhelming the experience is, there are always times when there are exceptions to the problem, when the problem is better managed, less influence the everyday life, or do not manifest at all. However small and however rare these instances are, it is our task as helper working from this approach to tap into that and to broaden and to help our clients identify with the exceptions to the problem and not to the overwhelming, being overwhelmed by the problem and by the experience. And obviously the approach is future focused and strengths and resources focus. And I'm very glad to hear our colleagues from Lebanon have such good results. And I would very much like to see more from their evaluation, because it seems that we are tapping into same competency skills in our clients, and that even though we might approach differently, that our end outcomes are the same, and that is something that I'm very glad to see. We are working, we are having a conversation about what already works. We are tapping into past successes of our clients and helping them to enhance their resilience, to decrease distress and minimize the potential risk of re-traumatization, because we are having a conversation about what works, about what our clients are hoping to be different, and how these differences will make a difference in everyday life. So this is a transformational conversation that avoids and helps us to avoid re-traumatization. But not only that, it benefits us as helpers, because we are becoming more resilient. We are excited with every conversation and curious about every strength, resource, and success our clients have to show us. And that's how we are becoming more resilient. We in our city use this approach both individually and in group. We even contributed to the field to solution-focused approach by developing short-term solution-focused group intervention for trauma and torture survivors, which I will be very happy to share with our community. We used that with our clients from Syria, Iraq, and other parts of Middle East, and we are using it now with Ukrainian refugees with same or similar exciting and transformational results. The benefit of tapping into and using this approach is that every conversation can be sufficient to make a difference, and we treat every conversation, even short one, as the only opportunity that we will have to make a difference, and that's something that's very exciting and also helpful. Thank you very much, and I'm open for questions and for the conversation about this.
Dragana, thank you very much. And now I'm going to say, if anyone would like to open your camera so we can see each other on the screen, we do have 10 minutes, I would say. We'll go a bit over time, 10 minutes for questions if you have any. But I just want to recap here, because Dragana is saying some incredibly important things that I think are like the essence of the way the rehabilitation centers and RCT members work, focusing on survivors' resilience, their capacities and skills, being able to work even in short sessions with a positive mindset that even one session can be productive and you're getting something out of it, and not least the focus on caregivers, that this terminology and using the methodology also helps the caregivers. And we know, because we also had a Care for Caregivers workshop in Berlin, that caregivers also need, you yourselves, frontliners, you need these positive reinforcements and support. So this seems to also be addressing that component of the way in which we work in the whole IRCT global movement and our response. So thank you very much, dear colleagues. This was a really excellent opportunity. Could I please see if there are questions out there? Hands up if you'd like to ask a question, and we'll try and make sure you come to the mic if you would like to ask something. And it's really nice to see. I hope you do. Please take the time to look on the screen. This is a global organization. You see colleagues from literally around the world, people in California up in the middle of the night, Robin here from the Pacific, from Australia hailing. It's really nice to see this response. So I'm filling time. Well, and Lena from California, I think, LA has a question. Lena, would you like to ask, please?
Yes, well, first, thank you so much. Let me just give a commendation about Dragana's really a very advanced terminology and approach that they're using. That is super helpful, and I'm going to address this with our organization. Hopefully, we can collaborate together down the road. Thank you so much, Mr. Dragana. So my question is in terms of collaborating with the United States, with US organizations actually. As a manager working with a nonprofit organization, like our organization is really interested in, maybe helping, assisting Ukrainian refugees or asylum seekers specifically. This is our classification of, this is how we are able to help people from Ukraine as asylum seekers. Do you have any potential collaboration opportunities or thoughts, or maybe to, and this is a question for everybody here today, or addressing Moldova, addressing Cyprus, and Romania. So are there any potential assistance or collaboration on this, towards this path with US organizations in terms of receiving asylum seekers?
Are there any of the speakers who would like to respond here? Otherwise, I do suggest, and in the interim, please in the chat, Lina, if you could also put your name and your email,
Sure.
and the name of your member center, of IRCT member center. I think you're from LA, correct?
Correct.
So it would be good, because in the IRCT membership, there's a possibility through regional meetings, but also bilateral meetings to connect. But I think you're looking for a more specific, if you're looking for a more specific relationship, we can circulate the emails of all the speakers and the organizations they work with. There could be potential for partnership, I'm sure, in many places and ways and shapes. But unless I see a colleague responding, I think you'll see examples of this in future webinars also. There can be staff that move from organization to organization. There can be training opportunities. There can be coaching opportunities, mentoring opportunities, communication. We can collaborate on sending messages out globally. You can also do co-training or co-design on working with the global rehabilitation standards, especially with respect to the response for Ukrainian refugees, but also many others.
Lisa, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure, I'm looking for your hand. Oh, I didn't see it. So go ahead, please, yours.
I'm sorry, I first waited for the reaction of the presentators. But if not, Lina, this is one of the questions we always have. How can we help in a manner that is correct and direct and gives the help on the place that's really needed? And in which way of capacity do we do that? We had some experience with Beirut, with Ukrainian, because it's not so far away for us. So if I can tell you about our experiences, maybe it helps you by finding a way to connect in the way that is for your fit, and also political affordable, because that's the problem usually about border crossing activities. You must build showcases before you can build alliances all the time, and I would gladly help you sharing our experiences.
I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I will share my contact information here on the chat as well for everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Venturing, we have colleagues all the way from Liberia on the call with us. Seydou, would you like to comment any perspective on the Ukrainian war from Liberia, or what's going on in Lebanon, or the way treatment is happening?
Oh, yes. I was actually thrilled to listen to the experiences of Ukraine from our colleagues. We are a little bit far from them, but we are also experiencing it in our own way here. And I was also very much to listen to some similarities as well, because we too experienced 14 years of civil war and have been experiencing a lot of other traumatic events, including the Ebola outbreak, and the reactions and the symptoms and the way, the manifestation of how things are. There are a lot of similarities in there. And it was almost like a reminder of us, doing that. Of course, I also learned some new things as well. So Yeah, and I just want to be grateful to our colleagues for sharing their experiences. And I hope our city will continue linking us like this in a forum or spaces that will continue to learn from each other and continue to grow. Because every time there's always this thing about, human experiences or behavior. There's always room, there should always be room to share experiences, but things are changing now globally every time. Yeah, and thank you very much. And I hope Lisa will remain like the emailing and thing, so you can also even share the presentation. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Seydou. And we will share, the material will be available. The recordings are also available. We know the time zone is not good for everyone. Recordings available on the FABO. So that's our e-learning site, but any other comments from other regions of the world? I don't know, Robin, this, if you would like to give us a perspective from what's going on in Australia.
It was really interesting to hear everybody's presentation. So thank you to all the presenters. We're a long way away, so the number of people that we're receiving is much smaller. But similarly, we've received a number of thousands of people from Ukraine who came initially on tourist visas and are now in the process of going through the temporary. Very similar things to what other people are experiencing in terms of them not having the same access to healthcare or other things and having to help people to navigate that, but also the interest in single session connections. So I would love to hear more from Dragana and connect with her about how they're doing that and what we can learn from that as well. Thank you.
Excellent, and very good point. I heard the same. I've heard some terminology about, first, I think it's almost like first aid, psychosocial first aid, these one sessions, and Dragana making that really count. If that's the only session you have, which is super important for that person, but how do we make that count? So maybe we should, we note that in the learnings. And we also note this interaction between the psychosocial and the basic needs that many of you have actually accomplished, it seems, very well, though you're not, certified humanitarian organizations, but you're doing this humanitarian frontline work. That's another learning, and then caring for staff. These are some really excellent points. Yes. So I'm just looking, Mohammed, would you like to say anything? I'm just trying to get different perspectives from around the globe. Now we are a global organization and you're on the screen with us. Dola Mohammed, would you like to come with any comments or your reflections, please?
No, thank you. I have no comments. Thank you very much for all presentators. It was very useful for us also. We will learn from them and use their experience that they have in order to apply in Iran also. Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. And Kai Ho Chung, would you like any perspective there? I think your microphone is muted. Kai, if you would like to.
I think he's in a public area.
Okay, good copy. Dear colleagues, it's been a real pleasure. I just want to check one more time. Anyone who would like to speak and feels they haven't been recognized or we haven't seen you? Then I would say in closing, as always, I really feel this is a special place that we're in. It allows, I think, equality and accessibility and an opportunity for us to join each other and know in solidarity we back each other. There are great offers of continued partnership here or increased partnership options. There will be more funding available coming out of the IRCT Secretariat for the Ukraine response in the next phase. We know this probably will be long term. But I think the learnings on, getting survivors involved and respecting their opinions. So for survivors speaking out, having a safe space, that's one of our strategic intentions, and understanding better the connection between mental health or psychosocial care and service of basic needs. I think this is another strategic intention for IRCT to learn more and do that better. And I think we can also have a voice in this long, ongoing discussion on mental health and psychosocial care and the interaction with that and a lot of other basic needs provision. You're the living example that it can work, and it has to work. We need to use all available resources, but we also need to take care of you. So, you know, respect for the frontliners out there, and know that also in IRCT and through some of the German centers, there'll be more care for caregivers going on in hopefully a project that will be working to develop in future. So thanks a lot, and Berta and the crew of interpreters and all of you who prepared presentations and took the time to participate. We hope you've learned something from today, and there'll be more resources available, as you know, online. Take care, everyone, and have a good workday.
Yes. Bye-bye. Thank you, Lisa.
Bye.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
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 Ciao, ciao. Bye, Maria Ángeles. Ciao.
Ciao.